How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees. Yesterday's game, demolition of the Philadelphia Phillies. They are sucking. They are sucking so bad to start the season. Where they've given up 37 runs in their first 4 games. They were outclassed. Maybe they had more hits than us, but they were completely outclassed. Our pitching was so good. They brought in their bullpen, and that was just a disaster for them. Walker got hit around a little bit. Obviously, we had a couple nice hits off him. Gleyber Torres got his home run. We're going to talk about him a little bit, and definitely want to focus on his hot start to the 2023 season, kind of quieting those trade rumors and putting himself in the focal mirror and in the point of just excellence. And really, everything he's done up to this point has suggested that he has a long-term future with us. You know what I mean? A lot of people will kind of comment back, and I know a lot of people are already on social media saying he's a streaky hitter, he has ups and downs, but I think he's got something to work for right now. I think he's got something to play for, and that motivation is fueling his hot start. So I'm excited to break down kind of his approach, what he's been doing for this Yankee team up to this point. We'll take a look at yesterday's game a little bit and break down some key takeaways for you guys. But before we dive into it, Ryan, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing great. You talk about Gleyber Torres. I think, one of the big things in this offseason, as you mentioned, were the trade rumors, right? There were a lot of discussions about, how the Yankees fit in Peraza and Volpe and Torres. And, there were definitely scenarios, where you could have decided, there's an outfielder available, or when we had pitching injuries, maybe there's a pitcher available that would have enticed you for Gleyber Torres. But I don't think that those options were available for Torres. I don't think that you would have gotten the value back you were looking for. And end of the day, Torres was supposed to be a big part of this team offensively. If you look at the Yankees last year, he was one of their better hitters. Yes, he had that awful month of August, and there's no denying that. But still, his overall season numbers were excellent. This is an excellent hitter. And the Yankees don't have a lot of excellent bats, right? They don't have a lot of guys who are, number one, established in the league. Number two, are coming off of pretty good years. And number three, are still in their prime, right? Obviously, LeMahieu's still a quality player, but you're always going to be worried about his injuries and his health. You're always going to be worried with Donaldson about injuries, but you're also worried that he may not be able to bounce back from a bad 2022. Volpe is a rookie. I guess Rizzo is probably the other guy there that's stable, but he's still also a guy who's entering some older years. So Torres is one of the few guys in their team, on the position player side of the ball, that's in their prime, that has experience at the major league level. And, we've seen him have great play discipline in the past. From 2020 to 2021, he walked a lot. He just didn't make enough swings to, put up quality contact and hit the ball hard. And in 2022, we saw that flip. We saw his walk rate dip. We saw his strikeout rate go up. We saw his exit velocity, his barrel rates, all that stuff reach career highs. So, 2023, so far we're seeing, you mentioned the game yesterday, 3 walks, a home run, a single. Can Gleyber go out there and kind of mesh that plate discipline with the power? Because if he can do that, then we're going to see the best version of Gleyber Torres, even including those 2018 and 2019 years. We know he's a good defender at second base. He's improved dramatically there. We know he's actually has 3 stolen bases already. So, he's already taking advantage of, the new pickoff rules and bigger bases. This is a really, really, really quality MLB player. This is one of the Yankees' better offensive players. And quite frankly, if you're sitting here and you want to keep doubting Gleyber Torres, continue doing so, but continue doing so at your own peril or your own, to your own demise. Because quite frankly, I don't think Gleyber Torres is going to go out there and finish the year with a bad year. He's going to have his downs just like he's having his ups right now. But overall, I think there's no doubts that he's going to finish the year with strong offensive numbers. How many second basemen hit you 20 plus home runs? There's not many.
I mean, look, like you said, Torres is going to go through those ups and downs. It's part of baseball, though, and every player has those streaky moments. The only ones that don't are the ones that have, record-breaking seasons like Aaron Judge. But every single player, you can't find me a player that didn't have a down month last year or a down week. And Torres was doing so well up until the trade deadline when he found out he was going to be potentially traded. And then I think his confidence just got shot because he was awful after that. I think he's a confidence guy, and you're seeing that he feels motivated right now, and he's kicking butt, man. I mean, he's hitting really well to start this season. Already, he's hitting 333 with a 53% on base rate, 2 homers, 4 RBIs. He's already stolen 3 bags, guys. He's on pace to break that stolen bag mark, his career high of 14 back in 2021, by a pretty significant margin. The bigger bases, the shorter base paths, these are all things suggesting that Torres is going to have some really, really good numbers this year. And the Yankees have been extremely aggressive on the base paths. He has a 249 WRC plus. Obviously, these numbers will reduce. He has a 6% strikeout rate, only 17 plate appearances. So yes, they're gonna start to go down to more average numbers. But right now, You're seeing an all-star caliber start from Gleyber Torres, and if he can maintain this pace, which is, like I said, very unlikely, but even if he maintains somewhat of this pace, you're looking at a very valuable player who can be a long-term solution for this team, and if he continues to play well, some people will argue this just boosts his stock in a potential trade. How do you view that? Do you think that this is more of a scenario where Gleyber Torres is, boosting his stock within the Yankees to be more of a prominent piece and a long-term solution? Or do you think that there's an angle here where he's boosting his stock as a potential trade asset where they can move him for something substantial and, fill a weakness? Of course, it's kind of a logjam right now. You still have Oswald Peraza at the AAA level. Who knows what they do with him? And they've kind of been DHing Gleyber Torres, putting him at second base. And they give Stanton a day off. They give someone else a day off. They give JD a day off. Maybe they'll just keep kind of rolling with this similar strategy of just, resting players a lot and making sure they're healthy for the longevity of the season. And then Gleyber Torres can play a really integral role in helping those guys stay healthy. Guys like DJ LeMay who have had injury kind of issues in the past. Maybe it's just a benefit to have all of these guys. Maybe you don't need to move anybody. You just use this strategy to keep everybody healthy. That's also a pretty reasonable argument, in my opinion.
Yeah, the way I view it with Torres is, end of the day, the Yankees are a World Series team. This isn't a team that should look on trying to capitalize on value the way they should look to just try to win games. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion. I sure hope it's not. But if the Yankees lose Gleyber in free agency, but he contributed to a World Series title, I'm not going to care that Brian Cashman didn't capitalize on his value. I want the best team possible out there. Now if there's a scenario where you can, as you mentioned, maybe it's in the off season, maybe it's at the deadline where, let's say Peraza came up and he's just playing out of his mind. Volpe is starting to heat up. Torres is around a 120 WRC plus hitter, and you can flip that for an outfielder that can help you give you that same level of offense, but in a position of need, maybe. But again, the way I view it is you can probably acquire an outfielder that can hit without trading Gleyber Torres. There are plenty of outfielders that are going to be on the market. Every year there are outfielders on the market you can trade for. Quality outfielders. Back when the Yankees traded Gallo, I know Gallo didn't work out, but he was considered a quality outfielder. Also on that deadline, there were Starling Marte was moved. The year after that, you had Juan Soto was moved. You know what I mean? Andrew Benintendi was moved. There are guys. There are always guys out there. There are always outfielders you can go out and trade for. And quite frankly, I don't really feel like the Yankees are in a position where they should be looking to try to capitalize on trade value. They shouldn't look at a good player and say, okay, we don't want to lose you for nothing, so we're going to trade you. It's okay to lose players for nothing, because losing players for nothing, you still got the service time value out of them. And if they contributed to a World Series, again, you don't really care. I don't know a single Yankee fan who would sit here and say they would rather get value back for Torres than have a better chance of winning the World Series. Even if it's 2% better, I'll take 2% better odds of winning the World Series, and I'll remove the ability to trade Gleyber Torres and get value back, because end of the day, he helps this team, right? And I need him here to help this team. I need the Yankees to put out their best nine every day, and that includes Gleyber Torres hitting, whether it's fourth or fifth. I don't really love him leading off, but he sometimes occasionally leads off. He needs to be in the middle of that lineup for this team. This team needs bats, and I don't really see a reason for the Yankees to try to move Gleyber Torres.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. Right now, he is an offensive weapon. Yes, guys, yesterday he got on base 5 times. You know what I mean? 5 freaking times. The last 2 games, he's got on base 7 total times. He's getting on base, right? He's producing. And they're using him in pretty prominent spots. He was leading off a couple days ago when DJ LeMahieu had that day off, and then obviously, kind of hits back into the 6th spot. But having a strong hitter like that in the number 6 spot right after, Josh Donaldson, you could even make the argument he should be hitting right after Stanton, and Josh Donaldson should be pushed down to the 6th spot. And right now, I think that would be a decent idea. I know Josh Donaldson has a little bit of power. They like his qualities as a veteran, but I mean, objectively speaking, I think Torres is the better offensive piece at this time. I think that's just true. That's a factual statement. But right now, I'm kind of excited to see how he can continue to compound on this success, because obviously he's been really, really good for the Yankees to start the season. Now it's just about being consistent, because we know when he's at the top of his game, and he hits a lot of oppo homers, something about his swing, he just waits and he just gets there at the right time. And for a right-handed hitter to hit opposite field homers and to take advantage of that short right porch in Yankee Stadium is a rarity. You don't see that very often. Stanton does that pretty well for what it's worth. He hits those freaking lasers down the line. If he's not hitting, 500-foot freaking nukes to center field and to the standing section in the concourse where people are paying $10 not expecting to see a ball land next to them. But having a right-handed hitter capitalize on that short right porch, Ryan, how valuable is that? Because I think that's an underrated metric that we don't really consider very often.
Yeah, so I've always been a big pulled fly ball guy. I have not been shy about that. If you've read any of my work, if you've watched me talk about hitters, I'm big on pulled fly balls. Now, Giancarlo Stanton is a freak of nature. That man can hit a baseball. He can kind of sneeze on a baseball and barrel it. And so I don't really think there's any part of the ballpark that you're safe at if Giancarlo Stanton's at the plate. But for Gleyber Torres, he's always shown really good power to all sides of the fields. As you mentioned, the ability to stay back and drive a baseball the other way. He barreled that ball, right? Typically you see barrels are pulled, or ideally, you would like to pull a barrel because you get the most out of it. But in Yankee Stadium, there is merit to hitting the ball the other way. I think Yankee Stadium is a nice exception to this always pull the ball in the air rule just because of right field. If you're a right-handed hitter, you can occasionally get a ball over right field. And as you mentioned, Torres has kind of always had pretty good opposite field power. At the end of the day, his ability to hit to all fields, especially with a limited shift, is going to help him a lot, right? I think that he's only going to serve to benefit from it. Last year, I believe his BABIP was under 300. Not saying he's going to shoot up to like a 330 or anything like that. But if he can get his BABIP to around 310, 315, which is certainly possible with his raw power and, again, his ability to hit to all fields, the average is going to climb up. The OBP is going to climb up. We've seen better plate discipline. Could we potentially see Gleyber Torres put up like a 340 OBP? That would be huge because with his slugging, 340 OBP, 460 slugging, he's probably going to end up, you get an all-star nod. You'll end up with like a 4.5 WAR year, and you'll end up being one of the better offensive players in the American League. I know Steamer projects him to be like a 4.2 WAR player over 600 plate appearances and finish like a 127 WRC plus, which would be really good for the New York Yankees. There are not a lot of second basemen who can do that. And as you mentioned, that opposite field power, there's no shift again, or not that there's no shift, there's limited shift. Yankee Stadium benefits hitters who can go the other way. It's only going to serve to benefit him. And that's how Gleyber Torres is going right, when he's hitting the ball hard to all sides of the field.
Absolutely. This is really an encouraging start to the season for him. But let's take a look at today's matchup a little bit. We got Domingo Germán on the mound, his first action of the regular season on the bump. So we're excited to see Germán. Had some good performances during spring training, some up and down ones, but that's expected for most pitchers. Germán obviously, generates a lot of weak contact. Someone that we are, I wouldn't say like really confident in, but I'm confident he can give us a couple of really good starts as we wait for our primary arms to return, notably Severino and Rodon. But here's a question for you, because with the way that Johnny Brito performed the other day, is there going to be another position battle at the back end of this rotation between, and I know previously it was Clark Schmidt and Germán battling it out for that spot, but are we now looking at Brito having an opportunity there to steal that fifth starter spot? Because I feel as though it's going to be kind of, you just keep going. We have a lot of injuries. I imagine that Brito gets one more start before maybe Sevy or Rodon returns. Is there a conversation that we have to have at some point where we're like, okay, Schmidt is not an experienced starter, so I'd say Brito's probably on the same like wavelength in terms of like, he maybe has a little bit more, bullpen experience. But what do you think about Brito? Do you think that he could put himself in the conversation and kind of steal that fifth spot away? Because I know Montas will be out for quite a while, but maybe Germán with the experience probably locks it down. But I feel like Brito should be in the mix.
Yeah, the Yankees have not been shy about keeping this an open battle. They let Schmidt and Germán battle in spring training. And while there were indications that Germán was going to win the job because of the experience and Schmidt having minor league options, as you mentioned, injuries are just everywhere, right? And especially in the bullpen. And here's something I've kind of thought about for a little bit, especially after that first start with Schmidt, where it's clear as day his stuff is good. Like, this isn't like a Schmidt isn't good enough to pitch at the major league level thing. This is can Schmidt go through multiple times of the order and not run into issues? Can Schmidt, handle, running into a tough inning and having to toss 25 pitches and getting out of it? Can he handle those things? That's a question mark, right? And on a team that has less pitching, he would be able to figure that out. But on the New York Yankees, you probably got like 3 or 4 starts to figure it out, right? And that's unfortunate for him, but that's just the reality of it. And as you mentioned, Brito was not just impressive, he was incredible, right? We know he has good command. This isn't like when Luis Gil, I don't know if you remember Luis Gil's first start, where he was just dominant. But we knew that him not walking any batters was not sustainable. Luis Gil has command issues. Johnny Brito does not have command issues. He got a lot of whiffs. His stuff is really good. There's not a lot of question marks about what Johnny Brito can provide. There's not question marks about whether he can go multiple times through the order. And Schmidt can bolster your bullpen. There's a real world where Schmidt is, a failed starter that turns into one of these high leverage guys for the Yankees. Michael King didn't put it together till he was 27. Clay Holmes didn't put it together till he was 28. I know he was a failed starter with Pittsburgh. Loaizaga, failed starter with the Yankees. Now, he turned into a bullpen arm a little bit younger than Schmidt. But the point of this argument more so is that Brito could fill in as your fifth starter, or even if it's Germán, and suddenly you have more bullpen depth, right? Suddenly suddenly Schmidt becomes a pretty nice relief option for you to have. Or as you mentioned, if Brito potentially beats out Herman for this job, Herman would be a really nice reliever to have. Herman's stuff plus is up nearly 10 points in spring training. And while spring training velocity, you may think it doesn't translate as well, there's a strong correlation between movement and velocity in spring training and movement and velocity in the regular season. So if you're the New York Yankees, you have an abundance of quality pitching depth that you can utilize in a lot of different roles. Just take that to just take it as an advantage. The Yankees don't really have, I mean, I want Brito to make the Yankees have to make a tough decision here because it means we have a lot of really good pitching. But at the end of the day, we know neither of these guys are getting postseason starts. So I think it's still valuable for them to get roles in the bullpen. So end of the day, as you mentioned, Brito should 100% get a big look at that fifth starter job. I think it ends up being Herman. But you can't have too much pitching. You really can't. These guys go down left and right. Schmidt and Herman have had extensive injury histories. Herman missed the first half of last year. He missed a good chunk of 2021. Schmidt basically didn't pitch in 2021. And there's injury issues. There's always injury issues with those two. So having more depth behind Brito can't hurt you at all.
Yeah, I mean, look, Brito could always transition back to the bullpen, worst case scenario, and you have a really nice middle inning relief pitcher that can take you 3-4 innings if you need. Like let's say, for example, Schmidt gets knocked out early, right? You have Brito that can come in and pitch some pretty quality innings and take you into a situation where you need the bullpen to finish off maybe the 7th, 8th, and 9th, but he can take you 3 innings really, really easily. And I think that's an asset. At the very worst, he's going to be a good bullpen arm for this team until maybe next year. I think that Severino ultimately, love the guy, but he is so injury prone at this point in his career. They probably let him walk next season, if we're being honest. And maybe they look to Brito and say, you know what? This is your chance to lock it down. You and Schmidt battle it out for a starting spot. Who knows? I mean, Frankie Montas will also be gone. The guys you have, of course, you got Garrett Cole still under contract. You have Rodon on a 6-year deal, which will be going into the second season. You still have Nestor for a very long time. He's under contract for a couple more years. So you have 3 spots locked down, and then you fill 2 more. And, Brito could absolutely be one of those guys. I think the Yankees still go out and sign like a decent arm with upside, but similar to what they did this year, let your youngsters, let your guys compete for a starting spot on the back end. I think Brito, yes, he'll probably have a couple of spot starts and fill in for injury this season, maybe play a much bigger role in the bullpen. But next year, I would not be surprised if he was making some moves to try and land one of those starting spots. And still, Luis Gil is going to come back at some point, right? Eventually, he will be back in the mix from the Tommy John surgery. And like you said, had a really great start, but the Yankees were extremely high on him before. He was hitting triple digits with his fastball. This is a player who, at the top of his game, was exciting. If he could get that command down, there was not many players that could hit him, So right now, coming off injury, of course, you kind of got to take it with a grain of salt because you don't know what he's going to look like on the return. But they're still very high on him. He's still very young. What is he, like 20? I can't imagine he's any more than 24 years old, right, Luis Gil?
Yeah, I think he's around 24 right now.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario is an elite reliever. I mean, the stuff is
right.
too good.
I mean, he's like Albert Abreu, but much better in terms of velocity. Right? I imagine
I was going to say,
go ahead.
The only thing I was going to chime in with was he's probably out of all the Yankee pitching prospects, Davey, Giovanni Brito, he's easily the most talented guy. As you mentioned, he's triple digits. I wouldn't even say compare him to Abreu. He's got better stuff, better shapes than Abreu. I think the comparison would be like Jonathan Loaizaga probably, because Loaiza's stuff is just, we know his stuff is healthy. Good. He just couldn't make it as a starter.
Yeah, right. I mean, Loaizaga had a good inning yesterday. He had 1.1 innings, looked pretty sharp. So that was really good. That was the first action he's had all year, which is interesting, by the way. Why did it take him 4 games to get Loaizaga involved there? Why do you think that happened?
It's probably just because we've been beating the crap out of a lot of teams.
Fair.
The first game, the third game, the fourth game, none of them have had high leverage moments. I know Loaizaga came in for 1 out maybe in the first game, but the second game's the only close game the Yankees have played. They've been beating the crap out of a lot of teams, so I think that's why they got Holmes and Loaizaga in there. Holmes struggled in his first outing, but Loaizaga and Holmes just to keep them from from getting cold. I guess.
I mean, it's pretty impressive, honestly. The Yankees have been dominant to start the year. That one game where they lost 7-5. They still, I feel should have won that game. They had bases loaded with Stanton up, and could have easily walked away with a dub. The bullpen just fell apart, which is a rarity for this group, but it's really encouraging to see. I mean, now, again, the Giants, not the best team. Phillies really getting beaten up to start the season. They miss Bryce Harper badly. But I'll tell you what, their pitching has been so bad. It's not even like Bryce Harper could save them from what their pitching has been doing to them lately. And a couple of bad defensive plays. Brandon Marsh missed that ball in center field. DJ LeMahieu ends up with a triple in the first inning, get a couple runs on the board early. So up to this point, Like, the Yankees have been playing well, and the most impressive part about it is that they've been changing their batting order, their lineups, their alignment every day. You're seeing IKF play in center field. You're seeing Franchy freaking Cordero with 2 RBIs yesterday getting involved in the action. That's impressive. When you're seeing these guys that should not be starting, a lot of them, right, in their specific spots, producing, that's really impressive, right? Franchy Cordero, traditionally he's been bad at the MLB level. Had a really good spring for Baltimore Orioles. He had that overthrow that Nestor Cortez managed to gun down Marsh at third base. So, that was not a good play by Franchy Cordero. That was just a better play by Nestor Cortez, if we're being honest. But Cordero still gets on the board, roping that double to right field, This is a player who, can do some stuff offensively. Got a nice lefty bat. So, they're going to utilize these guys sparingly, but we talked about Aaron Hicks a lot yesterday, and ultimately his role is diminishing fast. And Ryan and I were talking before this episode saying the writing kind of feels like it's on the wall, like he's going to be moved or something's going to happen to him at some point, because you don't go out and say these public statements. You don't say that Joey Gallo's looking better off the Yankees. You don't make these comments without, motive behind it. And then, of course, Harrison Bader comes back, and now you have another outfielder that's kind of in the mix. So how do you really expect Aaron Hicks to get more reps here? Like, they're only going to get fewer and far between. You're still not going to see Aaron Hicks with a lot of opportunities once Bader comes back. So, in my opinion, a lot of times when players, because they don't have a lot of leverage, a lot of times when players want to be moved, they make public outcries like this. They say things like this to put pressure on teams. You see Brian Reynolds did it too last year. So, you're kind of looking at a situation where, like, for the best of everybody, like for everyone's, best interest, it's probably the most beneficial thing to move Hicks, because, he's getting booed just standing around, he's not even getting booed doing anything. He got on base once yesterday, didn't really contribute much, but the guy is just a hostile environment for him, just like Gallo, and players are not going to perform in that environment. Now, I feel like a lot of fans want to see Hicks fail more than they want to see him succeed at this point, just to push their agenda. And I would love for Hicks to get back into and start dominating, kicking ass, because we want every Yankee to do that. But it feels like people are enjoying hating on Hicks now, which is a problem, because that is a situation where, like, they're enjoying, shitting on him. And that's not good for him, because he's going to get a lot of crap for it. And then when he says stuff like this, it only just, like, it's like freaking gasoline on the fire. You know what I mean? So, like, we'll wrap up here with your take on this. Do you think that Hicks is probably on his way out, or do you think they're going to try and move him maybe once Bader returns? Because right now, it's just not looking good for all parties.
Yeah, to keep it short here, Aaron Hicks, I'm someone who doesn't think he's like the worst baseball player in the world. I think there's some merit to playing good defense in left field and running the bases well. But the issue is just that, as you mentioned, it's a hostile environment, number one. And number two, I feel like making those comments can serve nothing but to hurt you. There's nothing good that was going to come out of saying that. There was nothing good that was going to come out of any of that, right? Valid complaints are not even valid complaints, because the ideal Yankee starting lineup does not include Aaron Hicks. And that's not even like me being like a hater or anything like that. Like, I think it's fair I think my track record would suggest I'm the farthest thing from like the biggest Aaron Hicks hater in the world. But Cabrera's the better. I'd rather have Cabrera in the lineup. I'd much rather have Bader in center field. I'd much rather have Judge in right field, or Stanton in right field, or making a line where I have Judge in left, Stanton in right, and Bader in center. Those are two outfield combinations I would rather have than Aaron Hicks out there, right? And that's, I'm sorry, I need offense. This team needs bats, right? And I've said this religiously. This team needs to put out their best offensive players, and Aaron Hicks isn't one of them. End of the day, the Yankees probably are just going to have to end up moving him. This doesn't help their leverage either, because it's clear that the Yankees need to get rid of him. Have they been able to pull off some trades despite having guys that are like obviously on their way out? Like, Joey Gallo was very obviously on his way out. They turned him into Clayton Beeter. I'd say it's turned out pretty well for them. But end of the day, Hicks is different. Gallo had, a lot more upside. Gallo was just a year removed from being an all-star and hitting like 30-something home runs. And Gallo was, someone that the Dodgers really liked. Gallo only had 1 year left on his deal. They only had to take on like $4 million. With Aaron Hicks, you're going to be inheriting close to $30 million. So it's a lot harder to move him. I think he knows that the Yankees want to trade him. I think he wants to be traded. There's no worries that he's going to waive his 10-5 rights or whatever it may be. but you're not gonna find a suitor. You're not gonna be able to get traded if you make it obvious you want to be traded and you make it obvious that you're not right for New York, right? Like it's not gonna help you. Teams are not gonna give Brian Cashman any slack. You think they want to help the New York Yankees? No, they don't. That the Yankees are trying to win a World Series. They don't want to help the Yankees win a World Series. So, for Aaron Hicks, the only recommendation I'd give him is just ride it out, man. It's not changing anytime soon. We're not close to the trade deadline. Trades typically don't happen in April. Just ride it out. Do what you can. Stay patient at the plate. And if you're decent, like not that fans will forget, but you'll have trade value, right? And if you do play decently, this team isn't stacked with outfielders. You'll get playing time. So I don't want to sit here and rip on the guy too much, but end of the day, the comments have to be better, man. You got to be smarter with your comments. Just from the perspective of not wanting to get ripped by fans, I don't want to see him get booed constantly. So I think for him and for the Yankees, him just laying low and just playing his game, that's the best thing he could do.
Yeah, this might be a hot take, but I feel like the Yankees may want to consider only playing him if they're playing away, because like that might be his best scenario to like actually have some confidence. Every time if he's in Yankee Stadium, in the back of his head he's thinking, I'm gonna get booed if I strike out. Like I'm gonna just rain down boos. If he's playing away from Yankee Stadium, might be a better opportunity for him to have some confidence. Know he's not gonna get booed if he makes a mistake. Or strikes out, whatever it might be, which is a natural thing for any baseball player. So ultimately, they may just want to like save face a little bit with him and try to build his confidence and at least have him be productive, because we know like any player that goes through this rarely is able to fight it off. The only guys that are like I've ever seen fight it off is like Stanton, right? Stanton when he was struggling at times in the past, we have booed him like to the end of the earth and he did not care. Like he just doesn't even hear it. And then he'll hit a home run and everyone's like, oh, there's Stanton. Like we love him again. And that's kind of like what sports fans are like in general across the board. It's just like a player could be doing terribly and then suddenly they're great, and then you hate them and you love them, you hate them and you love them. But ultimately, there's some guys that just don't have that mental fortitude, and right now Hicks is kind of showing that. So it's unfortunate. Hopefully, he can turn it around and be a productive player on this team, because we want every Yankee player to be productive. We want to root for everybody, you know what I mean? But that's not going to stop us from being critical on your gameplay. Is Hicks a bad guy? No. Like, he's not a bad person, and nobody has suggested that. And if you do, that's shame on you. We're only criticizing him for his baseball play, his baseball performance, not the type of man he is, because we know he's a great dude in that respect. But we want him to play well, and ultimately, like, those boos and the negativity will affect any player, more so than others, some more so than others, and I think one of those is him, and he's ultimately kind of getting his fair share of the criticism, which is really unfortunate, but hopefully he can turn things around and get some opportunities to show that in the near future. But guys, love to hear perspectives below in the YouTube comments. As always, make sure to like and subscribe. A lot of information in this podcast. We love to hear your opinions. As always, appreciate the love and support, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.